Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today it's the eve of Barcelona-Inter first leg of Champions League semi-finals, and I'm joined by Ruairidh Barlow, who is the editor of Football Hispania. Hello, Ruairidh. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, delighted to be on. It's good to preview what I'm sure will be a fantastic and very tasty encounter between Barcelona and Inter.
Surely, and you've been following with Football Hispania the press conferences from Hansi Flick and Lamine Yamal. There are a few updates after the recent win against Real Madrid in terms of fitness. So, which are the latest updates in terms of Barcelona regarding?
Yeah, so the big news, I guess, from Barcelona's point of view, certainly, is that Alejandro Balde will be ruled out. I think this game is going to be a little bit too soon for him to come back, and same with Robert Lewandowski. So that's two of Barcelona's starters, two players that they don't really have a like-for-like replacement. They do have Ferran Torres, who will probably come in for Lewandowski, and Gerard Martin, who's probably not quite at the level of Balde or others. But yeah, those are two big misses for Barcelona beyond longer term absences such as Marc Casado or Marc Bernal. And I think Lewandowski and Balde will both probably make the second leg, but we're not quite sure about that yet.
And of course, Lewandowski, it's an injury and it's a player that everyone's talking about. I think he's missed the last couple of games for Barcelona. And what was the setup for the Catalans without Lewandowski, and how did you see them without the Poland national?
Yeah, so Ferran Torres, who's been surprisingly very good all season. I think most Barcelona players wanted him sold. Most Barcelona fans wanted him sold before the season started. But yeah, he's been in excellent form all season. He's been really good coming off the bench and giving Barcelona kind of fresh legs from the start. I think he's done very well in the Copa del Rey. One aspect that has been talked about is the fact that he's been very good off the bench, giving fresh legs and really stretching defenses when they are tired. Whereas you obviously don't have that advantage with Ferran Torres from the start. But he does perhaps even more naturally suit this Barcelona system in some ways, in the sense that he can press in a way that Lewandowski cannot press. He can stretch the defense going in behind in a way that Lewandowski cannot. But what you miss with Lewandowski is obviously that instinct in the box. And if Barcelona are attacking against teams that sit deeper, then Lewandowski is much better at exploiting kind of smaller spaces in the box, finding that kind of little gap to get onto a cross. So yeah, that's kind of the difference you get, is you get kind of maybe a more pure expression of a Barcelona system with Ferran Torres in it, but maybe one that's slightly less effective and less multifaceted in that sense.
And of course, I mean, without Lewandowski, the big Barcelona name would have been with Lewandowski anyway. Especially with Lewandowski, it's Lamine Yamal who joined Hansi Flick for a press conference today, and all the Italian media were really impressed with the personality he showed off the pitch. I mean, they were impressed that he replied to a lot of even intense and important questions from the media, and he was really calm and relaxed, and it's not what you would expect from such a young guy before such a big game. So what do you expect tomorrow from Yamal? What's been his season like, and how do you what do you think generally about these press conferences? What are the most interesting things that he said?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of kind of headline lines that he gave us. One was that I wouldn't call it pressure. I would just call it kind of I'm going out there. And he also said that I don't really get fear, or I don't have any fear when I play. I left that in a park in Mataró, which is where he's from, a long time ago. So that kind of, again, shows you that personality you were talking about. He also said, I think he was somewhat, we're asking if he was perhaps a little bit arrogant, and he said, well, you can, while I'm winning, they can't say anything to me. Once I lose or when they beat me, they can say something. But yeah, so pretty good kind of responses, claps back from Lamine Yamal, and yeah, it's typical of a 17-year-old that has been completely out of kind of what you'd expect in terms of such a young player, in terms of kind of his bravery, in terms of what he does on the ball, in terms of his personality. Someone that has never really seemed shy. I mean, he said that he was he was very nervous in his first game, but since then he's never really been nervous. And so yeah, you get the image of a player that I think a lot of us were kind of worried very early on in terms of what this exposure would do to him, what this fame would do to him, how kind of managing this kind of star power that he has would affect him, and also kind of playing him so much so early on in his career. But what we've seen consistently from Lamine Yamal is an ability to handle it and an ability to kind of ignore what's happening outside. So, I mean, it has to be said that his career's gone very well to date. He's been very impressive so far. So yeah, that goes to show you what we're dealing with. And overall, this season, he gives Barcelona an ability to invent things. He gives Barcelona someone that they can go to with the ball, to rely on to hold it, and he opens up kind of a box of runs that Barcelona players can make, and he can find them with. He can go past the player. He is kind of the solutions man, to put it kind of in a very Graham Hunter way, who called Andres Iniesta the solutions man at one time. Him and Pedri are the two players that Barcelona go to when they need something a little bit special or out of the box.
There was an interview to Alessandro Bastoni, Inter defender, last week from Gazzetta dello Sport, and they specifically asked about Lamine Yamal, and he wasn't really in the mood to reply. It was still a good moment for Inter at that time because they were still running for the treble. It was a positive moment, very very different from what's been like right now. But he said, I mean, he said, I remember the game between Italy and Spain in the at Euros last summer. So I don't want to say much about Lamine Yamal because it will be a very tricky opponent. And I mean, Bastoni, it's probably been uh, one of the best defenders over the last couple of years across Europe, not just Italy, not just Serie A. And it says a lot about the threat that this guy is, despite being so young. I remember attending the Italy-Spain game, which was the big turning point in the Italy campaign very early last summer, and I had seen something from Lamine Yamal, but I really didn't expect what I saw, what I witnessed. It's what strikes me the most is that it always consistently makes the right decision, and it's not something that you expect from a guy who is 18 years old. You expect this from somebody who is in his prime or close to his prime, 28, 29, even 30 years old now, especially attacking players. It doesn't really make too many moves. One extra dribbling. It always does what's good for the team, and this is really impressive. And I think Inter will have to be really careful on that side because it's clear.
You have the same eyes as Xavi, because that's one of the first things that Xavi said about Lamine Yamal when he was kind of bringing him through into the first team was that, yeah, like I rarely have to tell this guy what to do because he always makes the right choices, and that's what makes him so rare in this kind of, in terms of him coming through and why he was so confident putting him on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really incredible what it does. And for Inter, I think that now today Thuram has returned to action, so trained for the first time after missing the last three games. Inter are in a quite bad position currently because just 7 days ago they were dreaming about the treble before the Coppa Italia semi-final with Milan. They lost 3-0 that game after losing against Bologna in Serie A. Then they lost another game against Roma on Sunday, which means 3 defeats in a row without scoring any goal, which is the first time since 2012. But Thuram is now back to action. Dumfries was introduced from the bench in the latest game against Roma. So these two players could be, I mean, for sure are two players who are difference makers for Inter, especially this season. Inter are a team that don't dribble much. I think they have the lowest amount of successful dribblings in Serie A, which it's pretty strange, but at the same time it highlights how well they play with the ball because the collective play it's really really good. The counter attacks are deadly, and even they know how to play any sort of game. They know how to press high, but they also know how to defend as a block. And when it comes to counter attacks and when it comes to being very quick in the final third, they've been missing both Dumfries and Thuram a lot in the last 2 or 3 matches. So I think they will be they are potentially two of the difference makers for Inter, but they look really really tired overall. The team against Roma. It's true that generally the focus and the concentration they have in Champions League game it's been very different from other competitions. And this is why Simone Inzaghi has been blamed a little bit as well lately. There was an interview from the Canyon Sky Sport Italia saying this thing. He said, Conte, who's the leader in Serie A now, he's very good at motivating the players. Inter probably play better football, surely play better football than Napoli, but Simone Inzaghi is probably not so good on the motivational side of things because Inter, for example, just won one Serie A title since he was appointed, and now they are 3 points below the leaders, Napoli, with 4 games remaining, which are not even too difficult for Napoli. So it's really a tricky situation because they were from dreaming of the treble 7 days ago to nightmare of finishing the season with no titles. And talking about Barcelona, where do you think Inter can hurt the most? What's the if there's a weak point they have?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you saw in the second half against Real Madrid of that Copa del Rey final that they're not quite as sharp and as on it as they were maybe kind of a month or two ago. Pedri gave a ball away a few times, which is very uncharacteristic for him. I think, again, similarly, Barcelona, the big issue, the big thing that everyone's been talking about for a month now is fatigue. And how do you manage this fatigue when Hansi Flick, by design, has a very intense system, a system that seeks to make the game very fast-paced, seeks to have a lot of opportunities instead of a few. And if you are not quite sharp in your press or you're not quite sharp in your finishing, then that plays against you, because if you're giving the other team lots of chances and you can't finish, or you can't kind of shut their attacks down quickly, then you're going to run into problems. And I guess it's one of the things that I thought was maybe an issue for Barcelona facing this Inter side, who, like you say, are exhausted themselves. But in terms of a matchup, I think Inter, I mean, you can tell me, I think Inter will maybe need to play less close to their best level to win this game than Barcelona will need to. And I think, again, where can you hurt this Barcelona side? One of them is Gerard Martin, who is relatively inexperienced. He was playing third division football this time last year. He's not kind of ever been cited as kind of a top talent to come through into this Barcelona side, but has been kind of very good in a sort of slightly conservative way. But he's certainly one area that Inter will probably look to attack, especially with Dumfries. And yeah, in midfield, I think Hansi Flick rarely ever, if ever, takes off Pedri. And against Real Madrid, he took off Olmo, Pedri, and Frenkie de Jong for Eric Garcia, Fermin Lopez, and Gavi. And to be fair, Gavi and Fermin Lopez went on to play a huge part in Barcelona winning that game. But it shows you the tiredness and the level of fatigue that they're dealing with. And I think, yeah, Barcelona, it's about, can they do the things well enough that they do well to beat this Inter side. But yeah, you'll tell me where the weak points are in this Inter side, because 7 days ago I was thinking Inter for me were the favourites.
No, Inter. I mean, I think we're going to see a different Inter because the focus and the concentration, as I already said, is going to be very, very different. The biggest problem now, it seems to be that they're really tired. I mean, the game against Roma was pretty disappointing because they struggled to create chances. They lost a lot of duels, and for this game they don't have Benjamin Pavard, who is one of the best defenders they have. I think they're still going to rely on Francesco Acerbi, while Alessandro Bastoni returns from suspension, like Mkhitaryan in the middle of the park. And I expect from Inter a very similar game to the one that they played away at Bayern Munich, first leg of the quarterfinals in the Champions League. So defend as a low block, try to cover as much space as possible, try to not give any chance to the opponents. I have to say that one of the turning points in the tie against Bayern Munich was when Harry Kane missed a big chance in the first half inside the box in the first leg in Munich. A few minutes later, Lautaro scored, and it's true that Bayern dominated possession across the two legs, but Inter really showed what they're capable of doing when it comes to quick counterattacks. I really expect something very similar to what we witnessed in Munich, with Inter defending as a low block, and if they're focused and they manage not to leave any space to Barcelona, they can finish the game with a good result. I also think that that Barcelona have a little bit more quality than Bayern Munich in attack, and especially due to Lamine Yamal. Um, there could be a mismatch on the left because right now um, Federico Di Marco doesn't seem at the best of his shape, so he will need a lot of time help from Nicolo Barella, which is something we already saw against Roma with Matthias Sule, who is in a very good moment. And he actually, Roma played with a different system, but Sule was used as a right winger practically. But a lot of times Barella had to track down and help Federico Di Marco because Di Marco is not really at his best right now. Then, of course, we'll have help from Alessandro Bastoni as well, but you will need at least two men on Lamine Yamal, and then again try to cover, try not to leave space, and then counter attack. For sure, the first hour, 70 minutes will be very important because I'm not sure Marcus Thuram is fit enough to play the whole game. He hasn't played for the last three, and he just returned to training today. So there were good feelings from the training camp at Inter regarding the intensity with which he trained over the last few days. But I'd be very surprised if he plays the whole 90 minutes. And the other option, because Correa, first of all, is not a very good option, unfortunately, for Inter. Secondly, is not in the Champions League squad. So the other two options for Inter in attack are Arnautovic and Taremi, and they're not these. And I mean, they're very different players from Thuram, so they're not going to counter attack as quickly as Thuram does. So probably the opening 60, 70 minutes will be very important for Inter. And then again, in the final minutes of the game, they'll have to be very, very careful and cautious at the back because for sure Barcelona are going to push very, very hard in the uh, from the very start. But I really expect probably in between the first half and the second half to have probably the best part of the Inter performance because in the second part of the game, in the final third of the game, probably Thuram is going to have to come off.
Do you think there's a chance that maybe Thuram comes off the bench because that's what Carlo Ancelotti did? Was keep Kylian Mbappe for the second half, put Kylian Mbappe on, and then open things out a little bit more when Barcelona were tired. And even if Real Madrid weren't good in that first half of the Copa del Rey final, and Barcelona did go ahead, the goal they scored was very good. Barcelona had maybe a couple of chances from set pieces, but more or less were kind of kept at bay. And Barcelona as well, they were a little bit more conservative with the ball. And I think that kind of affected their mindset in the second half when they had to open it out. And you saw there's a 20-minute period in that second half where I think Hansi Flick knew his team were suffering, but saw enough of an opportunity to, with the game stretch, to try and go after Real Madrid. And Rafinha missed a couple of chances. Real Madrid end up going into the last 10 minutes in the lead. So, yeah, I don't know if you think it would be a better idea to have Thuram for the second half, or do you think you put your best players out there and see what happens?
I think especially having not scored in the last three, he will go out with the best lineup that he has because really Inter have struggled over the last few games. But on paper, is not. I don't think it's a bad idea because, as you said, Barcelona will push. They get tired towards the final minutes, and having somebody fresh like Marcus Thuram would cause problem for them. It's actually not a bad idea, and I wouldn't be surprised if Inzaghi, based on what Barcelona did against Real Madrid as well, would make such a decision. I mean, in first place, I was even surprised that Thuram missed so many games because the original statement from Inter was practically muscle fatigue. So I would expect him to miss one or two games, surely not three games. So perhaps uh, they've kept him work behind the scenes and took a cautious approach with him, and probably again he can play 70, 80 minutes at a decent level. Um, but probably I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be. I would be more surprised if he doesn't start because again they've been struggling a lot and they've missed Thuram really much. So I think he wants to have the best lineup out there because Inter really need a good result after three very bad games. And one of the last questions I want to ask you it's about Wojciech Szczesny. I mean, of course, nobody expected him. He was a retired player talking about turning points a few months ago, and I read a few interviews from him. He spoke about the fact that it was good to have time and even spend time on the touchline, and not being given a starting spot straight away was good for him to focus on himself, so to focus on getting back in shape, and what's the general view on him. And I covered Juventus from Turin when he was there, and everyone was telling me that he was a lovely guy in the locker room, off the field. I mean, everyone really loved him, the fans, the teammates, and he really seems to be a very good guy.
Yeah, he's gone in very and arrived very much on his feet. I mean, he had a good Instagram post after the Copa del Rey final as to kind of what you were saying. He's saying they warned me about retired life, but it doesn't seem so bad. And it was a picture of him and Robert Lewandowski with the trophy. So yeah, he has lots of personality, Chesney, and he's been very kind of open and relaxed. And I think even if he's put in some really good performances for Barcelona, I don't think he's been as good as kind of Thibaut Courtois, for example, in most cases. But like, I think Chesney, what he's brought to this Barcelona side has been personality. And I think it's really helped a very young side, a defense that's playing a very high line, that's playing kind of a risky system. It's really helped to have someone like him who's so calm, who's seen everything, who doesn't, in some ways, doesn't care too much because he's living a kind of dream. I mean, he's playing after he's retired. This wasn't expected for him, so it's house money, as you would kind of say. It's very much easy for him to come in and be relaxed. So I think his presence has really helped this Barcelona team. People seem to really love him. And you can kind of see it in the interactions he has, and especially in the way that Hansi Flick speaks about him, because Chesney, he made two really bad mistakes in his opening 3 or 4 games, and Hansi Flick stuck with him. And I think that was much more to do with the personality that Chesney brings to this team than necessarily his quality as a goalkeeper, which is very good. I'm not kind of slating that, but in terms of what he's brought to this Barcelona, that above all has been the thing that's gone down very well.
Very last thing, let's go with the probable lineups. You go with Barcelona, I go with Inter. So how do you expect the Barcelona lineup tomorrow?
I do predict Chesney to start, Jules Koundé at the right back. The centre backs will probably be Pau Cubarsí and Inigo Martinez. Left back Gerard Martin. In midfield, I don't expect too many changes. I think we will see Frenkie de Jong, Pedri, and Dani Olmo, and then up front Lamine Yamal, Ferran Torres, and Rafinha. So that's the full kind of Copa del Rey lineup. The only real doubt for Barcelona is actually Fermin Lopez, whether he starts instead of Dani Olmo and Olmo comes on, because Fermin is better at pressing. He has more legs, he's more aggressive defensively, and he can be a kind of a duo or tandem more with Ferran Torres, I think, whereas Dani Olmo is very ball to feet. If you get him in the right kind of situations, he will create and he will invent. So on the one hand, you look at a low block and you think maybe he's better to break that down. On the other hand, you can look at it and say Fermin Lopez is like a second striker almost. He can get into the box and he can cause problems when you have 3 centre backs to deal with.
For Inter, I'll go with 3-5-2, of course, classic Simone Inzaghi lineup, with Sommer, Bissek replacing Pavard, Acerbi, Bastoni, who was suspended against Roma, then Dufrins starting again, Mkhitaryan returning from suspension as well, Çalhanoğlu, Barella, Di Marco, and then Lautaro Martinez and Thuram, even if you make me have a doubt now about Thuram on whether he would start or not. I still expect again to start because they need a result and they need to start pretty strong. Inter, and the big downgrade for them, I think, this season has been when they had to rotate in attack, because in defense they are, wouldn't say too deep because they're still pretty old at the back, but De Vrij has been pretty reliable. Bissek has been pretty good as well. Carlos Augusto has been a good replacement for Bastoni and Di Marco. The real downgrade, I think, is when Çalhanoğlu comes off and they have Christian Aslani, who hasn't proved to be nowhere near the Çalhanoğlu level. It's hard, but they haven't seen many developments at Inter. Wouldn't be surprised if he leaves in the summer. And then the level of Lautaro Martinez and Thuram compared to the others is totally different. I mean, it's a huge downgrade, and and it's probably the only area where Simone Inzaghi would need more depth and more quality options for next season. This is why I still see Thuram starting despite having not played the last few games. Ruairidh, thank you very much for helping me with this preview of Barcelona-Inter. The kickoff is tomorrow at 9 local time, so 8 p.m. in the UK. You can follow all the live coverage and the reactions on Football Italia and Football España. Obviously, thank you very much, Ruairidh. We speak very very soon.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.